Hey folks, it's Tom, your Frugal Prepper. I was getting the garden, the sod broken for the garden, the Mittlighter garden beds, and the tiller just decided to, boom, it was running great, and then fall on its face. I checked to make sure it was getting spark. I cleaned the plug, um, and then I got the starting fluid out, sprayed a little in the carburetor, and fire up for a second and die. So that told me it wasn't getting fuel, even though I had fuel in the tank. I had about a half a tank. And what had happened was there's this little thing, and this is the bottom of the carburetor here, and that goes in that hole, and then it goes down in the tank, and that's what sucks the fuel up. That had fallen down inside the tank, so I had to empty the tank and stick my finger in there and find this thing and pull it out. If I tap this in just a little bit, it does still stay on there pretty tight. I think I'm going to go to the auto parts store and look for like a little bit of like red Loctite or something to put on there and tap it in. Um, Make sure it stays in there. And then, of course, the one thing here that whenever I have a failure of some type like this, I like to kind of go back and analyze it and say, what would I have done if this had been an actual SHTF scenario? Well, I could hand dig a garden, but chances are in an SHTF scenario, I'm going to be wanting to expand my garden. So I'm going to need my tiller. I'm going to be wanting to help neighbors put in gardens, so I'm going to need my tiller. You can do that stuff with a shovel, but it takes a whole lot more energy. Sometimes it's best to use a little bit of gas, and you can save yourself a whole lot of energy, right? Um, so this gasket tore, of course, when I took this apart, and the intake gasket isn't really bad, but it's real dry and brittle. And the intake was actually a little bit loose from the engine, so it had been sucking air there for who knows how long. Um, Now I did go out and get a couple of new gaskets from the Briggs and Stratton dealer, and I had to find the engine code. This is like the model number, and this is like an extension of the model number, which tells you like the application for the engine and some of the specifics. This is the date code. So this engine was made in 1972, February 27th. The last 7 is the assembly line number, because at the time they made this engine, they only had one plant. So this one came off the 7th assembly line at that plant. Um, most all your newer engines have 2 digits on the end, which stands for the plant number and the assembly line number. And of course, I've heard from multiple reliable people. I haven't read anything about it to be sure, so I don't want to slam anybody. But I believe Briggs and Stratton now has moved all of their plants to China. They're actually a made in China engine. So you might as well buy a Chinese Honda clone probably. Um, but this is back when they still made them in America, and they were still really good engines. I went to my favorite place, which was Caldill's Lawn Equipment. If you're in or around the Springfield or Urbana area, um, I would highly recommend this place. They are very professional and very nice to deal with, and they treat you the same if you're buying a $1 part or you're spending $300 on a new engine, right? They will take all the time to help you, and they're just extremely nice and helpful, even if they're only selling you a $1 part. In this case, I bought the 2 gaskets, and the total came to $5.49. And they were able to look them all up and find the parts for me. And they had them in stock. Like they always have stuff in stock out there. So that's a great place. It's where I've always gone for my small engine parts. Um, Money's tight right now, but my plan is to go back and probably just get a complete gasket set for this engine to just put back, because the gaskets aren't that expensive. Get a head gasket, the crankcase gasket, get all the carburetor gaskets, and maybe even like there's a couple other little gaskets for where this needle valve sits in here, and there's a little gasket thingy over here. Maybe get some of those parts too, and just put them back, because if this was an SHTF kind of deal and I didn't have access to the parts, I could probably smear some silicone on here and make something work. But it wouldn't be as good, or it would be better just to have a few spare parts that don't cost too much. So I think for my power equipment, I want to get some extra parts and just put aside. And I may get those on eBay too, at least some of them. Um, but if Caldwell's has them, since they've always been so good to me, I'll probably just buy them there from a local business. Um, the just having some extra parts to be able to do some minor repairs and work on your equipment that you may be relying on heavily to get and help grow your food after an SHTF. The other thing I was thinking is they do sell rolls at the auto parts store of just gasket material, like flat rolls of this stuff where you can cut out your own gaskets with a razor blade. Might be good to get a roll of that too, in case I come across a weird gasket. I can probably trace it out and cut one and make it work um, in an emergency. Um, so that's just a thought. If you might want to keep some basic parts around for some of your small engine, uh, equipment and yard equipment and gardening equipment. Anyway, folks, this is Tom, your frugal prepper. I got to get back to work. I'm on my break right now, and I will see y'all later. Everybody, be happy and frugal out there.